Good morning, Golden Bears. It's Veterans Day, and we look forward to the second part of our interview with Army veteran Dr. Holly Everett. But first, a few announcements.
Speech and debate will meet after school today in room 424 before setting up lights for the holiday lighted forest in the Ecology Lab. Another practice will be held tomorrow during Power Hour A, followed by additional work on the holiday lights after school. Brack Auditorium will transform into Bikini Bottom this weekend as we present the SpongeBob musical on Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. The family-friendly production brings the beloved cartoon to life with colorful characters, lively music, and plenty of undersea fun. Tickets available at the door are $10 for adults and $8 for kids.
Important information for seniors. Justin will be here tomorrow to go over cap and gown information and distribute ordering materials. This will be held in the auditorium during Power Hour B. It is very important that you attend.
The holiday food drive starts tomorrow and runs through next Tuesday. Each hallway is collecting specific items this year to help Pantry Pals meet their holiday needs, and all hallways can bring hygiene products.
Applications are open for the 2026 Sister City trip to Japan. Students in grades 8 through 12 can spend a week living with a host family in Shizuoka City and Canberra, plus explore Tokyo. Learn more at the info meeting on Sunday, November 30th at 6:30 p.m. at City Hall. Applications and the $250 deposit are due December 22nd. To apply, visit shelbyville.in.gov/sistercity. Also, be sure to attend the girls basketball season opener tonight against Waldron, with JV tipping off at 6 p.m. and varsity to follow.
And since it is Veterans Day, remember, the U.S. Air Force and Space Force will be here Thursday. Now, let's check out part 2 of Dr. Rawlings' interview with Dr. Everett.
So obviously you went Army, you're a nurse in Afghanistan. You talk about what exactly did you do on a daily basis in that role?
So I was an active duty Army nurse when I got out of ROTC, and then basically how they decided who went overseas for medical assignments. They had what was called, different than like a whole combat unit deploying at one time from like Texas, like at Fort Bliss or Fort Carson in Colorado. They would do a professional filler system. So what that did is they plucked specific needs of certain people from all the Army hospitals worldwide. Because I worked in an Army medical center at that time when I deployed in Hawaii, but they would pick you from DC where I'd served for a bit, or Texas where I'd served for a bit, or Landstuhl, Germany. And they would get all these certain specialties, like so many ER, ICU nurses, surgeons, etc., lab techs, radiologists, and have you go together to like train up to go to Afghanistan, and that's how they filled their actual combat hospitals. So I was in a combat support hospital, which typically is like your tier 3 level of trauma care. So the first initial is battlefield with the medics, and then after that they would go to what's called a forward surgical team, and they would do just basically whatever surgery, trauma treatment they would need to stabilize them until they could get to the combat support hospital. And the combat support hospitals were more fixed facilities. The one that I was at Bastion, so it was at Camp Bastion. It was a British hospital, so I had to go with my group of people that were deployed from all over 2 weeks to York, England, prior to going to Afghanistan to do integration training with the Brits, because though we speak English, it's not the same.
Yes.
Metric unit versus other things like lab values were different. There's a lot of things that were not the same and not compared to doing medical care back home. So we went with them because we were getting ready to take over as the Americans, because the Brits were getting ready to pull out of Afghanistan with that hospital at the time. So when we went over there, I was an ICU nurse at the time, so I was the team lead for 10 ICU nurses on my shift, critical care nurses. So it was really busy. It was at the time, one of the busiest trauma centers in the world. Most of our injuries that we saw, there was never a quiet day. It was always busy. Most of the injuries that we saw were amputations, so a lot of IED blasts, a lot of blast injuries, multi-limb amputations that came in, and gunshot wounds. So besides, every now and then you would have some local things that were kind of like from the community, from local Afghan and children. Most of it was that kind of care on a daily basis. So typical day kind of looked like getting up. So I was on the British side of the base with the British hospital. We also had Camp Viking, which was the Danish side, which you would go for some really strong black coffee and chocolate cake they had
Yes.
over there. So when you had some downtime, you tried to walk over there with a buddy. And then the American side, which was Camp Leatherneck, which is a name I think a lot of people, if you're familiar with the military, you know it was a huge Marine base there. So the hospital was in the between. So you would get up in the morning. We would try to go to the DFAC, the dining facility on the American side. So we got good food because we learned quickly the British food was not great with mushy peas and curry in the morning. And actually some of our British counterparts, we learned how to sneak them in so they could come eat with us. So we would go do that and then go do a 12-hour shift. And our 12-hour shift was typically in the mornings, just kind of taking care of like normal patients or whatever, but about 2 p.m. every day it would pick up. And so you would get like this warning order that come in and tell you, hey, you have incoming, these are the injuries we have. And then it wouldn't be long after that that you'd hear the medevac helicopters landing on the flight line. So even if you weren't on shift at the time, when you heard the medevacs coming in, going over your tent, if you're trying to sleep or anything like that, you would pretty much pick up and run back over to the hospital because you knew maybe, oftentimes we had multiple mass casualties over there, so it would overwhelm our shift alone, so we would need additional hands. But typically they would come in, we had a 4-bay OR, they would bring those injured warriors in, so these could be any like nationality. So it was Americans, it was the Brits. I learned about the country of Estonia because we had Estonians, so we had Danish, we had Italians, Georgians, like we took care of everybody. Plus we also took care of Afghan Taliban members as well. They were triaged based off the level of injury, not based off of their nationality. So Geneva Convention says they don't care if this person here with the Taliban caused these injuries for the other guys, you treat them the same. So that was kind of mentally challenging at times. To kind of come over, but like normally they come in through the ER. You had 3 different like emergency physicians working on them, and typically, basically, patients were bleeding out with the injuries they'd had. So they'd go straight from there to the OR. And our ORs, unlike ORs here, they were an open bay, so big room. So you'd have OR table like 1, 2, and 3 here. So you'd have like 3 different teams and surgeons working on 3 different patients, often at the same time. And then from there, they would stabilize them, take them to the ICU, and then our job was, we never wanted an American soldier staying there longer than 12 to 16 hours after they came out of surgery. Our goal was to get them stabilized, get them medevaced with our critical evac team, like the Air Force team. So we had a counterpart on base. They would then air back them to northern Afghanistan, do any stabilization surgeries that they need, try to immediately lift off in air to get them to launch to Germany for more like extensive surgical care, wound clean out, things like that, and then back to Walter Reed or at BAMC in San Antonio, Texas. That was the other medical center there. That was a burn unit, so they had mainly the burn patients there, and then like the trauma patients went to Walter Reed. Most American soldiers made it back within 24 to 36 hours post-injury back to stateside so they could be with family and better care. And that was our goal. So that's why I think we had over 100 American soldiers that we treated in that 7 months, and all of them made it back to either recovery or to be at bedside with family when care was withdrawn. So that was kind of a typical day. And then the locals, like the Taliban members or like children, because war has side effects. So one of the effects are often some of the innocent being injured with it as well, and not always, I guess, the innocent, because one of my favorite memories is of a rambunctious little boy who lost his hand with us. He was probably 6 or 7. His village elder that would stay, the village elder would come and stay with us while we took care of him for weeks and months at a time till they recovered and could go back home. He was adamant we fix him because that was their best bomb maker. So it was a totally different world and lifestyle. But we took care of a lot of the locals. Like, it was hard not to kind of grow attached to some of them, despite maybe what their pastimes were, in the local village or whatnot. But they were really cute kids. We took care of a lot of pediatrics that were there at the time, and used a lot of like McDonald's toys and coloring books and things like that to really kind of bridge some gaps there to kind of be able to do their care and things. So.